everyone, and welcome to the latest of the Data and API show. Today, we have Jesse and Aman, who are going to show you some low-code magic here on the show today. And with that, I'm going to keep it simple and hand it over to the crew here. You guys take it away.
Thanks, Adrian. So yes, we are here for the next round of the Data and API shows. This is actually the first stream in regards to the low-code tutorial series that we've been doing. And I'm Jesse Martin. I work for the technical product marketing / developer outreach here at Hasura. And Aman, who are you? What do you do?
I'm Aman Mittal. I work as a developer advocate at Draftbit.
Fantastic. And Draftbit is what for our audience? What does Draftbit do? What makes it awesome?
Draftbit is a visual programming builder. So like you can build mobile apps inside it. So basically it's a no-code mobile apps builder in a nutshell. And the thing that makes it awesome is that you don't have to write code to build your user interfaces, to connect data and other stuff.
Yeah. So what we're going to be looking at today, the series we're running with is based off of a single Hasura backend that we'll be looking at what I've already done for the tutorial. And then Aman's going to tell me everything that I did terribly wrong with that. And we're going to fix the pieces that I didn't do right. We're going to look at maybe some more advanced features or things that he knows about. I want to preface this that when I built this, I had zero previous experience with Draftbit. My only advantage coming into any of the tools in this series is that I do have some experience using software tools, which means that I was working with some intuitive thinking or thinking where I would have thought things should be. But beyond that, it was totally a newcomer. So looking at the docs, looking at the application references. And so this would be very akin to the experience that most of you probably will have with Draftbit. And so I think you'll see, and when I saw it, I was like, oh my goodness, this is so fast to build mobile apps that don't just look like the traditional web wrappers that we've seen in the past. So I'm super excited about being able to show this off. I think there's going to be a lot of potential for people to be able to pair this. When you take something powerful like Hasura, which gives you all of these, permissions controls and lockdown and service integrations and event triggers and all these kind of features. I mean, that's what Hasura does. That's your data layer, but you still need the presentational layer. And so when you take a tool that says, you know what, we're going to just knock presentation out of the box, then we're going to that's great. You can take that data layer, integrate it with these presentational tools, and you get a really fantastic experience. So I'm not going to waste too much time. Aman, I was thinking that I would probably just first show off a little bit of the Hasura console just to get people familiar with the data model, like conceptually. And then we'll go into looking at what I built. And then from there, that should give you plenty of things to identify where we could improve how things were built. I have a couple of specific questions too, because I am not a mobile developer at all. And so I've done a couple of React Native Hello Worlds, and I was like, it said hello world, that was enough for today, and turn it off. And that's what my experience is for mobile development. And so we'll kind of look at that and see questions I have coming from a web first world, how to make things better and whatever else. So I will go ahead and do that now. I want to just check the comments here. I'm seeing them starting to pour in. We got some people coming in. Draftbit proper is in the house. So hello, Draftbit. Hello, Hasura. Make sure you guys stay nice to each other in the chat today. That'd be appreciated. And while we're doing this, one of the things I like seeing is if you're watching today, I'd love to see where you're watching from today. So, go ahead and post here. I've got the West Coast covered from the West Coast time zone. So I'm here from near Seattle. Aman, where are you calling from today?
I'm from New Delhi, India.
New Delhi. So we've got the range. So if you're past New Delhi, I particularly would love to see that. And if you're past Seattle, I'd love to see that too. So definitely post where you're from today and kind of light up the chat a little bit. Would be great to see that. Low code in Texas. Everything's bigger in Texas. All right, cool. Let's go ahead and hop on into it. So I'm going to share my screen now. And when I say share screen, what I mean, I'm going to share a window. And I'm figuring it out, finding it. There's the window I want to share. Very good. Okay, so we should be showing something right about now. To me, it looks like it's showing correctly. So if you guys don't see that, if you all don't see that, let me know. All right, so this is the Hasura console. You are watching the Hasura Data and API show. I assume the majority of you have seen the Hasura console, is my assumption. But I'm going to just give you a quick run through of what the data model is that we're working with, and then we're going to switch quickly over to Draftbit and see where things are at. So obviously we have our API endpoint here. I am working with Hasura Cloud, which I personally think is the best and fastest way to get going with Hasura. It just handles all of the pain points for you. This is the data model we have inside of my simple database. The model is not fancy. We've got a user. A user has uploads. The uploads are composed of an image and tags. And those tags are actually auto-generated from an AI service that's hooked up to it. It's an event-based programming paradigm. Upload an image. That image gets to an endpoint. That image gets persisted to storage, and then gets persisted to storage. And then when that happens, it then sends that image over to a tagging service, which just kind of analyzes the image and says what are the possible tags. Those tags get kicked back with the image to Hasura. And that's all kind of a long round trip thing. So what's ultimately happening is the image gets saved, returned to Hasura. That image becomes returned to the customer right away. So you get the persisted URL. And then while you're waiting for that to kind of go through, what you get then eventually is the tags also come back. So we're going to probably be looking at some polling today potentially, and talk about what the future of subscription-based queries might be, and different solutions. And one of the features, one of the glue pieces we're going to be using from Hasura to play with Draftbit specifically, because if I'm not mistaken, Aman, Draftbit reads data primarily from REST endpoints, right?
Yeah.
Or only from REST endpoints?
Currently, it's only from REST endpoints. We also have a direct integration for Firebase, but there's no GraphQL support yet. But we are working on it. It's in our roadmap.
So GraphQL is going to be there in 2 weeks. No, I'm just kidding. Just promising your product team, So GraphQL coming soon. Hopefully, if that's something you really want to see, definitely hit the Draftbit community and let them know that that's something that you'd be excited about. What we can do in the meantime is taking this data model and the queries we want to work with. When you define a query, you have the ability to persist that behind a REST endpoint. And so in the case of, and we can go ahead and make a kind of a test one just to show kind of the flow of that. So if I were to come into my GraphQL editor here and make sure I can see around my microphone here. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new query here. We're just going to call this something like get five uploads. And what I'm going to do is simply drop down and say, okay, get me all the uploads. I believe I'm not able to see it at the moment because I'm not authenticated. Let me turn that back on. There we go. And I'll go ahead and say, get me the uploads. We'll limit that by 5. And it's just going to grab me the first 5 from whatever the default sorting mechanism is. And I'll just grab the ID. Let's say this was for some reason the query that I wanted to run in my system. What I can do is I'll take this and I'll hit the REST button and it says create an endpoint. And I'll just call this the get5 query. And then I can give this an endpoint here. So it's /API/REST. And then call this something like get5. And I'll make this be a simple GET request because I won't be passing on any parameters. And hit create endpoint. And just like that, I've created a REST endpoint for a query. And this is the important stitching magic that we're going to need between Draftbit and Hasura to make sure we're able to get the content. So in the case of what we're looking for, we have this get list query, which is simply getting a list of all the uploads. And then we have a get single query, which is getting us all the uploads and it's getting us the tags. Now, the tagging service we have is really taking some liberties. It's untrained. It's taking some liberties in terms of just how much it guesses. And we've told the tagging solution, give us your confidence interval as well when it's doing that AI analysis of how confident are you that's really actually in the picture. And so we're filtering out here to say, okay, only give me the tags where the confidence interval is greater than 50, which usually limits us down to maybe less than a dozen tags per image of relatively high confidence that it's accurate. So if you're uploading balloons, you're going to get, balloon party colors, but you're not going to get cloud, rock, whatever else, which are maybe like down to the 1s or the 2s on the confidence interval. If there's any questions on that, definitely hit up chat. I'm just going to look at chat here real quick. So we'll see. It's like, yeah, no questions so far. So doing very good. Lots of different locations coming in. I love seeing that. Very good. So we'll keep that rolling. Anyways, what we do on the get single request here, which is also worth noting, is we add this URL parameter, the colon article ID, and that allows us to pass in a URL parameter for this query's input argument, and that allows us to fetch the specific fields. And this will all make sense once we look at the Draftbit side. And yeah, so I think I have covered the majority of pieces here. What we're going to do now is switch over to Draftbit. We're that far. So we're going to go ahead and go over there, look at what we've built, and then we're going to start tearing it apart and use the majority of our time to kind of figure out how to make it better. And should be interesting. All right. So if you go over to the Draftbit console now, very clean, very nice console. This is where you would see all your projects, access to documentation. It's all really great. Here's a chat here that I'll go ahead and close down so we're not broadcasting that around the world. That's great. And we've got community example screens. Yeah, everything looks pretty straightforward. We'll go ahead and open up the project that I have built. And I'm going to go ahead and open up, I believe, is the window here, right? If I hit share, that'll give me the URL for the window to kind of view the app in functionality.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and grab that.
You can also click on the third button from the center panel, like the live preview button.
The preview, yeah. Okay. And this will allow me to show the mobile, right?
Yeah, you can basically scan the QR code and you need a Expo Go app inside your mobile device, and you can preview
which
it on
I
your phone.
have. Let me go ahead and just see what happens if I can show that to the screen here. So I'm going to just open this up in Expo. I'm not sure. Theoretically, I should be able to potentially bring this screen in. I'm not positive on that. Let me see if I can do that first. I'm going to try sharing here.
You can also use the web preview mode, which is like this current, which is called the single screen mode.
Which is called what?
So if you close this live preview mode right now, there's the current view which you are getting on the canvas is called a single screen mode. It shows you your app, the layout of your components, which is reflected again in the layout tree on your left hand side. But this button in the top,
this one here,
this is called the web preview. So you are seeing your app in functionality mode on how it would run as a PWA.
Okay, very cool. So this will be the faster way to demonstrate without having to try to bring in my mobile screen or open up a new tab. This is great. So this is a nice one. I didn't even actually know about that button there. I was always using the preview functionality. So we have this view here where we can scroll down. We can view. These are all public domain images from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. I forget the lady's name at the moment. It's in the tutorial, but you should definitely look up her work. It's phenomenal. Fruits and vegetable illustrations. Good enough that AI identified what they are. So this is a bunch of images that I have grabbed from the public domain. And then if I click on one of these, it takes me to a single view that shows me the photo, and then it shows me the tags that, again, have that interval higher than 50. So pretty simple application. We're not breaking any ground on creativity. This is not a UI show. This is a data integration show. So if we come back here, let's kind of have a look at what actually was created and how we did that. So what I have here is at the top level is this feed. And if we go to the data tab here, let me see if I get this correct. All right, the feed is the style application, right? That's the layout component is feed style. Is that correct?
It's just the name of the screen. So it's like the screen container where all of your components inside the screen. So for example,
so if I change this, here to something kind of like all pics,
it will change the name of the screen as well as the
change the name of the screen. Okay, very good. The view is like a top level container of everything that we have. And then we have that fetch is where that first bit of data interop occurs.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
If chat can let me know if this needs to be bumped up in size, and I can try bumping it up in size anyways to see if that's helpful. Very nice work on the dashboard. It just scales very nicely. Yeah, so we have the first fetch here. So what we do is we have this service over here, the Hasura Rest service. Now, I'm remembering that I had defined that initially over under the data tab. And I had done a custom REST endpoint. And then here I added then the REST endpoint. And it's like you're passing in the parameters. Are you still with me, Aman? Or
yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, good. Yeah, sorry. I just saw all of a sudden the full screen and I thought maybe
that's okay.
I'd lost you. All right. I'm too old for this stuff. So we have the basically the base path defined of the rest of the resource, where we're able to define any specific headers that we want to be passing in. And then we have these individual endpoints at that resource, right? So the base path is the API /REST. And then we're able to define the sub endpoints here of /single with that article ID parameter, or the get list, which is just simply buried at the //list endpoint. Does that still so far sound like best practice or correct way to do things?
Yeah, it is the correct way to do things. And I'm fascinated, I'm amazed, even on the first trial of Draftbit that you gave with the tutorial, you were able to figure out the global variable stuff. I mean, it's like a compliment to whole of the Draftbit team to pass on secrets and figure out global variable stuff.
Yeah, I have to say I've done a few of these tools, and I'm not going to name any other ones at the moment. The Draftbit was particularly intuitive, following the documentation, following the guides. It was really well, and that actually made really well, worked really well. So I have a question for mobile development. So I have the Hasura admin secret, and I have the value, which was defined as a global variable here. And that global variable, I'll just hop out here and we can kind of have a look at it. It's underneath settings. And that was underneath, I think, app variables. Yeah. So these are globals that are available everywhere. How does that work in mobile land? Where, so like if I have a server, right, on a server, I control that hardware as a web developer, and I can define that variable gets loaded in the environment, and I can protect that and make sure that never gets exposed to a client. If I'm shipping an app like this to the client, like what kind of protection do I have, or is there even a protection to say that variable is not available if somebody wanted to sort of tear apart my application? I'm not a mobile dev, so there may be some assumptions here that I really just don't know.
That's a good question. And you can also view the code of your current screen and how the request is going on and what kind of variables it is using, if you want. The app variables are basically those variables. Once you restart your app, they get their default value. So if you're passing it as a header or like a normal header, like some REST API endpoints needs some mention the version of the API, it is good for them. But if you're passing it as a secret, there's nothing that Draftbit does it on currently on our end. But so you'll have to like protect.
So there's no
your
secret if you pass a secret in here. It's getting shipped in the package to the client. So you need to make sure that you're not. So what I have done in this application is not recommended best practice, because what I've done is I've taken that default admin secret and I've put that inside of the project for the purpose of removing some complexity. But you would want to have a proper authentication flow, or in an ideal case, you create like a mobile user for your application. Hasura is going to be rolling out at some point in the future a service level token. So you'd be able to do this same thing, but it would be for a service that you could lock down, like just a simple key that would be protected and would be allowed for just the operations you want. Like in this case, these are just read operations. The token I've given it does a lot more than read. That's not what you want. But you'd be able to create these basically like a permanent auth token for a service level integration and use that instead of the one that I've used here. Or you could create a simple user role. And Draftbit does have tutorials on authentication, right? With using it with different. You have one with Magic Link, correct?
We have with Zeno. So Zeno is a backendless service, and we are covering like the Magic Link part of Zeno and the email password, the normal credentials one with Zeno.
Okay, so again, best approach here would be to have a protected token of some kind that's not going to give all the keys to the kingdom to your project, like I've done. So yes, that's a best practice there. But in this case, if you had that, or you had that service level integration, or you were using a proxy service, which is also a possibility, you could put that value in here. This is not the full token, so don't try to guess the rest of it. It's cryptographically not likely that you are going to guess the rest of the token. Then you'd be able to go ahead and upload that content. So it's good to know. Here's the other app settings, right? So you can have the splash screen, you can have the app icon, other information that you'd want to show off about it. What else is in here that's a cool thing that I don't know about?
It's all the settings available for on an application level. So Draftbit behind the scenes, Draftbit uses React Native and Expo, and all of these configuration is required when you're publishing an app to an app store. So for example, you can set your orientation of your app, whether you want it to see it only on portrait mode, or you want it to be in both. And you can select the platform. You can select set your bundle identifier, which is required for some services that you're communicating, and in other cases when you're publishing your app. And they are like for Android, if you scroll down, you'll see like you have to manually enable these permissions. So if you're writing code, especially with a React Native app, you have to take care of all this stuff. So we are just giving you a panel that takes care of all this stuff. And you also know that as a Draftbit user or a mobile app creator, that what kind of service or what kind of permission you might require.
I think this is really a critical thing to call out about the low code space, low code / no code, is that this is not about not code thinking. So the only thing that low code really does is it front loads all of your planning, strategy, design, concepts, wireframes. It front loads all of that. And then you go into more or less just clicking the pieces together beyond that point. But you have to, you need to know what the difference is between course location, find location for Android, and what the indications of that will be. You need to know what all these things do, because like this is still about app development. It's not about, well, I'm just going to throw these things into a bucket and hope that this tool takes care of everything. You still need to be developer, technology, software thinker, as opposed to really being like fully low code. So this abstracts a ton of boilerplate, which is, open to typo errors and everything else. Like that's great. That's the helpful part, but it's like, that's not actually abstracting the thinking part of it. So low code is really, it's not replacing any developers. It's just replacing maybe somebody who's good at writing a lot of boilerplate, but your customer ideally is not hiring you to write boilerplate code, or your deliverable at work is ideally not delivering boilerplate code. Your deliverable is a function, a service, an application, and a feature. And that's where this stuff really saves a lot of time for teams, because it's kind of hard to make a typo when you're pressing a Boolean toggle.
It is. And getting to like, when I started working with React Native, this was like one of the first things that I learned, that you have to manually, you have to be explicit about adding permissions to your app about different platforms like iOS and Android. And there's no magic happening. You have to know what kind of, so for example, your application uses camera, you have to know what kind of effect that goes into the app when the user is using the app, the end user is using the app. So yeah, you're right about having a thought process, or having a little bit of knowledge about what goes into the app.
So if we go down to app variables now, so that was what our globals were, and then device variables here. What would device? I'm not going to read this blurb online because that's not great television. What's the crux of what device variables are there for?
Device variables basically they allow you to store any kind of information on your user's device. So you can persist. You can persist any data or any kind of string on your user's device that you might require in some use cases where that information has to be shown, or that global variable has to be reused in different app screens. So in terms of web, or in terms of React Native, it's like local storage or async storage. It persists your value. That's it.
So the app variable is just like key value store, and device variable could be something that's mutated throughout the life of the application, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
Like if you're republishing your app, the device variables doesn't get reset to their default values. So like if you're defining a key value pair, you have a default value, but app variables will do. They will get reset to their default value.
And is the concept of local storage on a mobile device, is that actually still like a local storage, or what is something that is what's the corollary concept on a mobile device?
It's called async storage. As far as I know, coming from like background of web and React Native, but they are like different variants of async storage. So async storage is basically storing the data on a user's device, and it has some limitations too. There are also other open source libraries that allow you to store basically that are sensitive information. So like you can use secure storage, which is similar to this, but in terms of like storing the key value pairs. So yeah.
All right. There's some comments in the chat regarding the pricing or freemium model for Draftbit. What are you able to do on a freemium side versus when do you need to pay versus what's the world look like there?
Yeah, currently the pricing model, like if you sign up for Draftbit, it allows you to have a 14-day trial. And after that, you have to choose a plan, which are like different plans available. For like the starter plan allows you to have like, you can create 3 apps and you get access to all the features. So there, like Draftbit doesn't stops you to use features which exist inside the builder, depending on the plan. It's just like other things that Draftbit takes care of.
Paid or not paid, and then it's all available.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, and like, I like freemium. I'm in developer relations. I get that. When you look at what the service and the value that tools like this are providing, there is something to be said. Like, you know, so a team is putting a lot of hard work into this, and you want more of these tools to be around. So there's something to be said. What is the pricing? Where does it start off at? Can I pull that up here on the window?
Sure. You can go to draftbit.com/pricing.
If I go to Draftbit Pricing here. So $99 a year, like that's cheap. Yeah, I mean that's for 3 apps and all visual building features, code export, which is great, like no lock-in. And then professional, 10 apps. I mean, again, $500 a year. Like you're charging ideally more than that for your customers when you're building something for even just one project. So, yeah, for what most of the customers are asking for these days, and how fast you could crank that out. Like these are days of your life back. So, yeah.
I mean, the difference between these two packs comes if you can handle your own submission to the app store and all that stuff, and you don't need support from Draftbit, you can go for the starter app, and it's no different in that regards from the professional package. It's just that professional package has different things, like Draftbit will take care of publishing the app to the app store, and you can export the whole project at one go. In starter app, you can only access the screen level code. So for like each individual screen, you can only export that kind of code. So yeah, those are the two major highlights.
And like, to be honest, priority chat, like I've worked with the team a little bit for a few questions and things, and they are very knowledgeable. So priority chat also, like that's actually helpful.
It is. If you are like stuck, and there are times when there's a limitation of one person's knowledge if you're working as an individual. So yeah, that is there.
That's great. Back to the tour. So, right. So we're back in here, and I'm going to go ahead and nice, very, very nice marketing there. They saw that I was on the pricing page, and thank you, Nick from Draftbit, for your willingness to help me with pricing. Good marketing flow there. So what we have is the rest of it. So we had the fetch here. So we chose the resource. We chose the specific endpoint that we created. Under configuration, there's nothing defined here. And I think that's because we'll see that on the individual screen where that comes into play. And on the preview, we see the data that actually comes back, which is actually really helpful. Like, how many times do you console log? Dear developer at home, do you console log your request to the server just to see what came back? Like they show that to you here, which is really nice to be able to actually like verify that A, it worked, and B, that the contents is functioning. So that's actually super nice. I really like that. Very good. We got a question there. Are the apps SEO friendly? Maybe there could be some, maybe you know what he means by SEO friendly, or they mean by SEO friendly. I am not smart enough to know what would make an app SEO friendly versus not SEO friendly. Or maybe Rudix, you can add some context to what it is you're specifically wanting to know there. And we'll let you post those questions and get back to that. Because I don't know what that means. So while we're getting some more context there, we'll kind of keep on with the tour here. Keep an eye for the response there. So we get the fetch, right? We get the data, and then we come down to a iteration component, something that then creates a list from that data. And if we go, I think, to the data tab here, right, we're able to drill down and pick the top level response from the server that we saw previously. So on the fetch tab, we saw that we get the key back upload. And on fetch, we're taking that property as what it is that we're wanting to iterate over. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it is.
And the transformers, we're going to see them in a second, but transformers are nice too, because sometimes that data is not coming back in exactly the shape or format you're wanting, especially if you're working with maybe a legacy API endpoint or one that's not contrived that you built just for the purpose of a tutorial, which is sometimes the benefit that developer advocates have.
It is also like on the point of transform functions, a lot of them comes in handy, like especially there's a special transform function called add bearer prefix. So like some of the REST API endpoints comes with an auth token that requires you to add a bearer prefix when you're sending the requests. So we have that kind of transform functions available too.
Just handling some top level use case there.
Yeah.
So then we have a view here, which is just, again, another little container box. Now, what I had wanted to create in my project was a touchable interface for like the whole thing. I wanted it to be that not just clicking on the image or clicking on the ID or something. So I made a touchable drop down. Was that the best way to do that? Or was there another way to do that? Could I have made the view touchable?
There's no other way to do that. The touchable component is there for making your views to make them touchable. And
this is a React Native thing, right? Because they have these concepts of touchable interfaces, pinchable, and everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. So on that touchable, if I remember where I defined that, so so here we have the interactions tab. And what we told it to do was on a tap, we wanted to navigate to the screen article view. And when it did that, we defined the screen that it's supposed to go to, and then it's passing data to that next screen, which is what we're calling article ID, and that's taking the ID of one of those upload elements that we're currently iterating over. And we just pass that directly to the next view. When would I do, like, this was what made sense to me. When would I use something like the navigation parameter?
So the navigation parameters are a new feature. They got shipped last week, and it's like when you're building your application, you may not have data, like if you're building a particular screen, but you want it to show or represent the kind of design you have, and you want some mock values or dummy values to show on that screen. So you can create a navigation parameter for that particular screen and define how your API would come across these navigation parameters when you integrate the data from a REST API.
So when I did my data source and I defined the Hasura resource, here's the upload ID. If I recall correctly, I was able to pass in a test parameter here, so that basically when I'm building, there's data that's present. Is that kind of the same thing then, or is that a different?
These are different things. So what you're doing in this model is that you are testing your endpoint that it is working and the data is present for this particular ID. So, but the navigation parameters, they don't require you to have any kind of data integrated when you're building your app screens. So for example, if you are done with your list screen and you want to go to the article view screen, but you don't have any data to represent it on it yet, you can pass some navigation parameters. So for example, if you go to your article view screen right now, you can see that on your fetch component, you'll have to define it from that screen. So basically, you define your navigation parameters from the previous screen that you want to navigate from. And later on, when you have data, you can connect those, remove those navigation parameters and connect to your actual parameters, like what you have done in this app, like passing the data and connecting the article ID. In your case, you are just passing the article ID so that it fetches the data again on the article view screen. But in some cases, you only want to pass like 4 things and don't want to fetch the whole data of that individual.
Oh, okay. So if I potentially didn't even want to do another fetch on that window, then I would be able to simply pass in the fake parameters or whatever that are being. Okay. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Got it. I've learned. Great. Let's go back to the main screen here. Oh, it looks like we're getting. I'll hopefully get a kickback on that, so that's good. We got Jared Beekman is loving what he's seeing. We love to see that. All right, we go ahead and we have text now. So I'm drilling down. I got some sort of sub views. These views are just kind of like containers for layout purposes, right? That's basically all they do.
Yeah.
And then we have like text here and text, and you'll see, I mean, these are, if you've done anything with Figma or Sketch or any other traditional design tools, you're going to be somewhat familiar with kind of how these design tools operate. There's nothing particularly out of the ordinary here. What is interesting is when you can get to these transforms. So with the text here, I'm able to define using the kind of sort of handlebars-esque syntax, where I'm able to define the variables that I want to have represented on the page. Because if I wanted it to be article ID in this case, or I think I have the article date, if I wanted it to be something kind of like this, then that's going to update my screen to show a prefixed date, which is static string, and then the variable. So it's string interpolation. I think most of you are probably familiar with that. Here's where you can see a situation where that transform comes in handy. Now, I wrote a custom one for this purpose because I wanted it to do what I wanted it to do. And that was really helpful. You can do that up here underneath the custom. If I can get the little UI to go away. I think it's because I'm zoomed in so far that it's overlapping. It's probably the situation there. If I go to the custom functions here, so I created one called format date pretty, and it's like super simple Lambda-esque style, like simple like function handler here. So we have the text input, and then you can add in other things too. You can add other packages and whatnot, which is super helpful. It's way out of the scope of what we're doing here. And you're able to then return the date to locale string. So I was really just leaning into the browser primitives here. But yeah, very, very straightforward way to do this. I did have one question regarding hooks. So in React Native land, obviously, because we're fetching content from a server, when would it make sense for a user to potentially create a data fetching hook and try to iterate data off of like some sort of a React like component did mount kind of situation and be able to sort of hook into that life cycle of the React Native components versus tapping into the direct top level primitives of data fetching in Draftbit?
The way you do that in React or React Native, it is all handled by Draftbit. Behind the scenes, you don't have to like write a use effect hook or write a component.
Is that even possible manually in Draftbit?
It is. I think there are like a couple of hooks if you go to custom hook, and there are like 2 or 3 different types of hooks currently available. But I don't think use effect is there. But yeah.
Now, could I theoretically do a WebSocket connection and make a custom subscription from the client on one of these mount effects or use effects? Would that be possible within Draftbit?
It should be conceptually.
Theoretically, right?
Yeah. I haven't
Performant, no, but it would be potentially possible. Okay, that'd be very interesting to test and see. That's a challenge for the audience. See what you can do. I'll send a T-shirt your way if you got a Draftbit using subscriptions example. We'll get a T-shirt your way. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So I mean, custom hooks or custom functions, very easy to define and set up. You define the parameter here of what you're passing in, and give it a description if you want, but that's really straightforward way to handle that data. I think I reset the transform there, so let's go ahead and just re-enable that. We're formatting that with a pretty date. Very good. ID, again, I did another custom format, basically stripping off just a bunch of excessive junk that came from my AI parsing tool. I don't have a nice name for these images, which would be kind of a fun thing to implement. So then when we have the last kind of piece here, because boy, we're wrapping up quick on time. Well, you have then on that touchable, if we go to the article view, then essentially what it's doing at that point is it's just taking in at that top level fetch here. And we talk about the configuration because we defined that as having a URL structure inside of our resource or on the endpoint of our resource. Here we're able to define what value we're passing in. Are we using the navigation ID that's being passed in from that touchable from the previous screen, or are we using the get endpoint? Yeah. So what are we passing in for our data? We're able to define that right here for that request. And inside of Hasura, we're able to see that right away. And then basically it was the exact same thing that we'd already done. We mapped all of the different pieces using transforms or non-transforms. One thing that I'm looking forward to in Draftbit, looks like I
think article title.
I may have broken something because I may have toggled something to a hook. So that might be my bad. Poking around. One thing impressive. You broke it. Thanks, Thrashing Code. So one of the things that I'm looking forward to is those custom functions being persistent across screens. So defining a custom, because I had to redefine the. That'll be nice. I'm sure that's something that's been requested, and I'm guessing is on the roadmap.
It is both yeses to both of those things, and yeah, it is kind of hard right now to defining custom functions for individual screens. But yeah, we are working on a way to share those custom functions in between different screens.
How long has Draftbit been on the market?
I think it has been on market for 2 years, but yeah, it's basically it was in beta. It's still currently in kind of a beta mode because we are releasing new features every week. And earlier it was based on GraphQL, so like there was no REST API or Firebase was available as far as I know. All these changes and all these things that you're seeing has been upgraded in past 1 year.
So the whole application basically had a rewrite about a year ago, you're saying?
Kind of, yeah.
What's the backend you're using now? Just out of curiosity.
It is based on custom Node.js servers with PostgreSQL and GraphQL.
Very nice. I know a good service for PostgreSQL and GraphQL integrations, if you're curious. I know of one that does that really well. Yeah, so I mean, and like keeping up with the React Native world is like, that's a full-time job, just keeping up with okay. Commenters ignore that last comment there. No, yeah, AWS has great tools, but if you want to have an instant GraphQL API with Postgres, you don't have to look any further than Hasura, because we'll just do that for you. But what I'm saying is, though, the React Native ecosystem is just going so fast, so quickly, that just really gives you there's a lot of things to keep up with. But then also at the same time, making it an app that serves all the use cases that the customers are wanting to implement is quite impressive. We're really getting tight on time here. So what's something that you would love me to show off, or to be able to, something you saw that I could have done better, or what's something that we can demo here or show off that you think is really cool, that's worth calling out?
I think the way you created all these things and all, like set your own screens and data and integrated the data, I don't think there's any other way to do that, because Draftbit is quite opinionated in this manner. that you have to like create a service first, define your global variables, define your HTTP headers, and then create endpoints. I don't have anything particular to demo or like to show off. I mean, you have gone through like the crust of all the features so far that exist in Draftbit on a top level. Yeah, that's
yeah. I'll go ahead and add out there. So at the moment, and I just want to say that Draftbit has officially declared that they are using Hasura, which is fantastic to see. That makes my heart so happy. So that's awesome. And they're going to throw in a T-shirt also if somebody wants to get a subscriptions example working with Draftbit and Hasura. So the challenge is down there. I'll add, we have a developer program, like a technical writer program where you can submit tutorial ideas. It'd be great to see somebody wanting to do like Draftbit with mutations enabled. So some kind of a user auth login, data interop, so upload and download. That would be really great to see. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of room here in the tutorial space and dev space, because Aman, you're the only DevRel at Draftbit, or is there others?
Yeah.
Are there others?
No, I'm the only one.
You're the only one, so you got to help Aman out and write some tutorials here, and he'll get you hooked up for sure, right?
Yeah, we are constantly looking for content, and there's a limit what I can do. But if you are like writing on Draftbit and using Draftbit, hit me up. You can also we have a vibrant community, and we would love to share that with our community also.
Yeah, that's great. Aman hasn't slept in 7 months. Draftbit has officially confirmed. So yeah, come on, people. Help a dev out. All right. So I want to just say one more time, thank you so much, Aman, for coming on today. It was great being able to meet again. We met once at the React conference in Berlin. But it's great to actually be able to sync up and do content together. This was fantastic. If somebody wants to create a tutorial, we'd love to feature that, show that off. When you have new features, let us know, because we'd love to be able to show that. This combination of because Hasura handles a lot of the data integration stuff. There's coding involved, but it handles a lot of the data layer stuff that just abstracts all of the tricky bits and is able to do things like expose the data over a single REST endpoint. And being able to consume that from a tool that's so dedicated to the presentational logic and being able to just work with the tool that offers these features is you're just spitting nails at that point, where it's just working really, really well together. And so I would really recommend if there's any opportunities for new features to be showed off here, our channel is always open. We'd love to show off more things in the future. But once again, thanks so much for coming out today. And that's basically all I have.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Aman. Thanks, Jesse. Also, I'm going to totally remember spitting nails. I don't think I've ever heard that statement. That's pretty serious.
I learned that from Sal Sahoyan. I had to dig there a minute to pull up the name. He was basically one of the original DevRels for Apple on their. What was their scripting? Apple Script. It was one of the Apple Scripts. He wrote the Apple Script Bible, which is like that thick. And I brought mine to a talk where he was giving in the area, and I had him sign it. And he told me when I understood these 2 or 3 concepts, I'd be proficient enough that I'd be spitting nails, and I have kept that.
I like it.
That was
very hardcore right there.
I don't do Apple Script anymore, but I've kept the term.
Nice. Cool. So thanks again. Thanks everybody for watching, and definitely next week tune in. We're going to have another data and API show around building a meetup.com clone with Gavin, and I'll be here hosting to kick everything off. So be sure to tune in for that. That's going to be awesome also. So again, everybody, cheerio. Have a great one. And we'll see you then.